So like as a kid growing up, I guess in South Africa, living sort of like 4 hours inland with like nothing to do. So the old man, he got us some little motorbikes when we were younger. I think our first bike was maybe a Pee-wee 80. And that was fun. That was a ripper. We'd rip around the backyard and we'd crash it into shit. I'm Bosch, I'm 27, this is my Sportster. Never really had money for like nice things, I guess, like realistically. Then I guess at 15 we sort of moved here. Always liked bikes, always liked the off-road bikes, kind of thought I'd really sort of be able to entertain that, but realistically it's inconvenient having off-road bikes. You gotta have a trailer, and then when you go to the tracks there's like so many other people there and you just can't get amongst it, and they're all fast riders, like they rip around something serious, and I just want to chill. And then yeah, one day I was fortunate enough and I had the opportunity to pick up one of these, and I bought just a stock standard clean like Sportster at the time, like not knowing anything about Sportsters at all. I just knew I wanted a clean one, tidy one. 883 is my first like big bike, so I don't want to like overcommit. And I remember just riding at home, I was just so nervous that I was going to drop it, just the weight of the thing and like just how the power comes on, even try and go around bends and things, kind of like thump like this, just not used to it. But then yeah, kind of gradually just got used to it and just sort of fell in love with it more. And for a long time I thought I was just going to keep the bike stock. I was like, it's just so mint, like, and it had the spoke wheels, and when I first saw it, like I was kind of like, nah, that's what I want, old school kind of look. Was quite low at the time, but again, as I said, I just wanted to keep it stock standard, and I must have had it like that for probably about a year and a half, just completely stock. Then my mate actually bought a bike, and that was sort of pre-modified, and then after kind of having a blad around on that and like seeing like that, I very quickly sort of was keen to modify it. There's not much of I guess like a young scene here in Taronga for this kind of stuff. So I like to think that hopefully I'm pioneering something, and a few of the other young boys will kind of get amongst it. It'd be sick to like be able to ride in like a little group of these things, you know, just swerving around pesting. So my first bike in New Zealand, I think when we first got here, my dad got us like a CR85, basically. He got me a CR85. In South Africa, where I grew up, we could push our bikes down the road for like, you know, maybe 2-3 kilometers, and it's just wide open bush, and we just fang around there. So to do that over here was, yeah, as I mentioned before, just a lot more inconvenient. So kind of shifted road bikes. I think my first road bike, I was 18 when I got this, was FZR 250. But yeah, it went hard. I was kind of scared of it. It wasn't a tidy bike, and it had issues, and I don't have time or money or like any know-how to like fix the thing, so kind of moved that on. And then I was without bikes for probably a good like sort of 4 or 5 years. I say 4 or 5 years. Me and a friend were meant to be doing like a South Island trip on bikes, and he couldn't kind of get a bike at the time, and I was still pretty adamant to try and do South Island bike trip, and that's where this one came in. Probably about 4 or 5 years ago now, I bought the GT, and that was intended to go around the South Island. A bit ambitious, like realistically can be done, absolutely. I think I just kind of wanted to like ride that round like a little bit and sort of make sure that it was able to do some miles, and it hasn't been. It breaks down like shit almost every other time I take it out. That's part of it. And I try to keep that one going, and I've sort of just fallen in love with it. There's something about the two-stroke, just in the high RPMs when the power comes on. Like, it's not a fast bike by any means, but just the noise it makes and just how it feels, and it's lively and it's peppy and it's got some character to it. I like older bikes, even if they're a bit tatty, scratched up, dinged up. They've got character, they've got soul. So this is my first ever Harley. And I do think that I will keep this one sort of until the day I die, and I do think I've changed it a bunch now, and I think it'll continue to change a lot more over the years. I haven't done a lot of the work myself, but fortunately there are people around and available that have been keen and able to like do the mods and the work on it for me. You can get a lot of sort of off-shelf parts for these things. I think that's the best part about them. You can turn a Sportster into whatever you want. You can make it cafe style, sort of a Frisco style, I guess, is what I'm aiming this at, which is sort of like a late 70s sort of style. And then I guess I got a bit of the old Harley fever, I guess, and then I started looking at the bigger bikes like the Dynas and all that, you know, because everyone else is sort of frothing them and kind of jumping on that bag. And these get a lot of shit, to be honest. People hate on them, but to be honest, like most people that don't ride bikes or Harleys, they see it and they just think it's a Harley and they froth over it and it's cool. I try to make mine a little bit different. And then I guess we got the iron head over there. Just because I wanted like a truly authentic Harley Davidson experience, and I don't think you could get a more authentic experience than the old dirty iron head. And again, there's a lot of hate towards those, but I like that one. It needs a lot of work, obviously. I'm sort of thinking maybe in the next sort of 5 to 10 years I'll polish up, whether I cut the chassis in half and full hardtail chopper it, rake it out and just have all the old boys get real angry at me for molesting it in a sense. But that's kind of always what I sort of envision myself doing. When I was looking at motorcycles, I used to hate Harleys. You just imagine these old boys chromed out bikes just going on their Sunday rides, boring as shit. So when I was looking, I wasn't really even looking, to be honest. As I said, it was a very spontaneous thing. I'm quite a spontaneous person. It was a very last minute Sunday morning, bored, it was a semi-nice day, I guess. I think it was a nice day. It was why I was scrolling Marketplace as you do, and then just this bike popped up out of nowhere, and I was like, Sarah, can I go get a bike? And she's like, if you want. I was like, yeah, sweet. And then, yeah, as I mentioned, an hour later, I had myself my first Harley Davidson. It was either going to be a Harley or a Triumph, I think. But yeah, for some reason the Harley just sort of sat better. It felt a little bit better. I think I could do more with the Sportster than what I could do with the Triumphs. The Triumphs would sort of end up being a cafe race or a tracker style in a sense, and I definitely wanted more of like just a chilled out, like kind of beach cruisery kind of vibe, you know, like just something for like sightseeing, not going fast by any means. It sounds good, looks good, I'm into it. And I'm just sort of trying to change the stigma on them a little bit, like try and get young dudes into them, I guess. I say stigma on them, just the Sportster stigma, that they're not it's a girl's bike. Absolutely, it's a girl's bike. But it's also a very cool dude's bike. And there's nothing more embarrassing than if you drop a bike and you can't pick it back up. So think about that next time you're looking at your big ass Dyna or lowrider. So when I got the bike, it was fairly stock in terms of the only modifications people really do on these when they buy them from the factory, like straight out the shop, they normally chuck an exhaust on it. So this came with an S&S exhaust, and it sounded great. I think it was a great sort of sales point for me when I first picked it up. And other than that, it had controls in the front, the old forward controls, which I wasn't a huge fan of at the time. I kind of always sort of envisioned mids, just because I felt like I could ride it a little bit better. It would probably handle it better. Me not being the most confident rider, I was definitely more aimed at like, let's make this thing safe for me to ride. I then decided I wanted to do some modifications on it at some point. I was still pretty like ignorant as to like what you could do to these bikes, and I think a lot of the parts I initially sort of were looking at and choosing out, they were quite tacky and cheesy, but they were just, you know, these machine bullet things. Then luckily I kind of sort of found a few bikes online and kind of saw what they had done, and that sort of like steered my style into like a little bit more of a simplistic kind of role. And that's, I think, how we ended up with this S&S air filter here for a start, the old classic teardrop style. These have been out since, I don't know when, probably pre-60s, 70s. These have been on Sportsters and other Harleys. I then saw a bike with these pegs. I saw a bike, I was watching dudes riding, and their legs were like up here, just pinning it like through streets. I think it must be in California somewhere. So I mean, these are called Frisco pegs. So these sit 4 inches higher than your mids. Your mids would be sort of mounted down here, and these sit 4 inches high, and it just kind of, don't know, just gives you sort of a bit of a traveler-y kind of vibe, you know what I mean? Like, you just want to kind of get amongst it, rip around. So I had these made up. These were custom made. After that, bars, obviously 12 inches. It's a smaller bike. I don't want anything super excessive, you know, big old 18s and 8s. I thought 12 inches sort of a nice mid-ground, 10 seem too low. I do think one day I'd like to make them a little bit narrower, kind of have a bit more of like a lane splitty kind of vibe going on. This is something I don't like talking about because everyone that owns a Sportster does this, tank lift. And it's trying to imitate, again, like a 70s style where the dudes used to mount their tanks on top of this top tube, I guess, in a sense, and they take and the whole point in doing that was so they could get more fuel out of it. Then they take your fuel tank, your fuel cap, and you move it up there, and you take your petcock, which is on the other side, move that from there, move it down there, you get as much fuel out of it as what you can. But for the sake of the newer Sportsters, there's a lot of loom, there's a lot of wiring, EFI. So we lift this up 2 inches. There's a big, ugly plastic loom casing here with the coils that sit right there. And again, throwback style. You want to clear up this whole triangle space here, so you move the coil over to the left-hand side of the bike, and we chuck the ignition way down here. Take the loom that normally runs down there and chuck it up underneath the tank, because you've now created yourself 2 inches worth of space, so that's where that goes. A lot of people do it wrong. They lift the tank and they leave all that ugly shit there. Like, what are you doing? Like, do it properly. Then from there on out, it was still a very low bike. So this from stock was an L model, so L being low, XL. And it really didn't ride all the best, especially once I put these tires on. It was real kind of like swervy and stuff. Then I thought maybe like just try and like trail it out a little bit, like try and get it more stable at speed. When I say speed, I'm talking like 90 to 110 kilometers an hour. Yeah, like we're not like racing here. But also just the choppery vibes. I just want to like inspire some choppery vibes. So we then ended up going 4 inches over on the fork tubes, and we also put some Sportster Roadster damper tubes in them, which gave us like another 2 inches over the stock. So every time you jack up the front, you got to make the kickstand longer to kind of counteract that. A lot of other people, when they jump on it and they try to pick it up, this massive hoof thing, you really kind of have to almost use your leg and use both bars to get it onto its wheels. Tires, yes, the square boys. So I've got some Shinkos on it. I'm not exactly sure what the name is, but it's a classic sort of style, I guess. Almost road tire base, if you were to look like an old sort of Model T Ford or something, old skinny boys. Apparently these have a tip over point. I'm yet to find it. I like them. It definitely ages the bike, I reckon, by about 20 years. When I tell people what year it is, it's 2009, they're almost like shocked at like, oh, it's quite new. I'm like, yeah, it's quite new. Like, and I wanted a new bike because I wanted it to be reliable, and the old ones just sometimes aren't. Like having to deal with carburetors and stuff, it's just, they're a little bit finicky. And then just most recently had this sissy bar made for the back. The plan is to strap a backpack to it, then that would act as a backrest for like long trips, really give it that kind of travelers kind of vibe. It's purely for show at this stage. Had this custom made. I'm a mate of mine in Rotorua, actually. I've sort of fabbed this up for me. I was trying to import one in from the States. Relatively would have worked out like at a similar price, and it just would have been like just another stock boring one. I do still have to have this chromed. What the process with that will be, I don't know, but this has been a huge learning experience for me. Once you start doing modifications is really when you do open up your eyes to the extent that you can go to, and it does leave you with like a lot of hindsight, you know, wishing you had done this, and like as opposed to that, and like, oh shit, this is not quite what I thought it would be. It's a bit wider, or it's a bit narrow, it's too tall. The more I've done to it, the more I've like fallen in love with it again. There'll probably be a couple more small changes, but generally I'm pretty happy with where we are right now. I was contemplating putting a 21-inch front wheel on it as well, just old school style, but I think once we jacked the front up, I was pretty happy with the stance of it, just set up just slightly. This bike exists purely for fun and purely for something for me to do. Realistically, I don't really take it out of Taronga all too often. It's not great on the open road when it comes to like overtaking and stuff. We do have a 1200 kit for it that will help that one day, but for the moment I'm enjoying the 883. It's fun. It is surprisingly in the low end. Like, it has got a bit of pep. With this, whenever I get bored, there's always something else to do. There's always another modification to be done. So when I'm riding, I guess the feeling is just like a bit of like an escape. I guess in a sense, to be just basic about it, as like cheesy as that sounds. just nice to get out, and like you can't look at your phone, you can't interact with anyone else, you're sort of just isolated, and there is a feeling of freedom, and you're looking cool at the same time. So of course you want people to see you, and you're like, yeah boy, look at me rolling through on this noisy old pesty thing. I'm sure some people hate it, but they've obviously never been on one, so they haven't experienced them themselves. So I tattoo artist, have been for like the last 9 or 10 years. I don't count the first couple of years. Yes, so when I got into tattooing, I started from home basically, as a lot of other tattooists have, and everybody always tells you to get an apprenticeship, and I agree with that. Go get an apprenticeship. Some apprenticeships are more of a waste of time than others, but generally it will fast track you and you will learn the right way to do things. Motorcycles, I guess, have always kind of been more of that kind of that bikey culture. Old boys getting their sick old tats. I love seeing old boys with like, you know, an eagle and a snake, something on the arm. Is so faded out, but it's just so rad because it's just so era correct, and they're on their bikes, and they're normally like Harleys or Triumphs, and they're all about that sort of cruiser vibe. I did ride it to work for a while. I think it was maybe one of the key reasons why I bought this bike. I was working in Hamilton for like a little bit, and when I moved back to Tauranga, so I live in Tauranga CBD, and I managed to like line up a spot at a shop in Papamoa, and maybe like 22 kilometers away. And I thought, shit, it's perfect excuse. I kind of like lane split and get through traffic pretty quickly, get there, and then sort of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Like I'm able to ride to work and then experience a bit of just me time on the way back home, on the way to work. On one of the first rides I took on, I got a couple of stone chips on it, and that sort of put me off from riding it. Then it's when the bike was still very new to me, and any and every little scratch was kind of like almost heartbreaking. I'm over that now. I do want it to be a tidy motorcycle, as long as I can, but at the same time I'm going to ride it, I'm going to use it. I'm not afraid to drop it. I'm not going to cry over spilt milk, in a sense, you know, shit happens. There's that artist, I can't remember his name now. He used to do the centerfolds for the Easy Rider magazines. I look at his like stuff like every other day, and he just does these cool like paint. It's all just choppers and Harleys and all that other stuff. So maybe if I could take inspiration from there's a few other dudes that sort of do the flaming skull thing, super sick, black work, tats. Yeah, it's all very chopper inspired. You can't do that kind of stuff with a sports bike. It just wouldn't fit the niche. I suppose you could absolutely, but very cheesy, very tacky. Oh, so I like motorcycles, just to be clear. I'm not like a Harley snob by any means. So I've got GT250, that Harley over there, and then I've also got a Yamaha R6, just by the way. That's not in the shot right now. I don't know how long I'll keep that one. Maybe have a couple of thrills on it, maybe learn a little bit more, do one of those ride forever courses, and then sort of move on, because it's just not who I am, unfortunately. Though I do appreciate them. Absolutely, I like all motorcycles, so whatever you're riding, just keep riding it. I take it probably out like 3 or 4 times a week. As I said, like I don't go far, maybe 50, 60 Ks at the very most, just full local laps. I'll try and find some windy back roads or just do some of like the expressways. A lot of the time it's just 50, 60 K zone, just chilling out. I do like looking at myself in the building's glass when I kind of see myself roll past, you know, and I do suss myself out, and I'm like, yeah boy, it's all about the vibes. It's all about the vibes. Future plans, immediate future plans for this bike. I've got to tidy up this rear section. So these indicators have got to come off. This taillight here has got to come off. I've got some new indicators to go on there, so stick out a little bit further. Have this chromed, put those on. From there on out, probably paint immediately. But I think as time goes on, I just want to keep tidying it up. I want to keep hiding a lot of the electrical stuff. There's a lot more electrical in this, I think, than people assume. Keep hiding a lot of that. I want to get these big clusters off here, and maybe move this down to there. Just generally tidy up, clean up, get rid of these wires and stuff here. As time's gone on, I've just kind of liked it more and more. And I've got the other Harley there, and that one might be a very extreme build, a very impractical. Hardtail won't be comfortable. I'll have to wear a kidney belt when I ride it.
Do you want me to keep your stutter in? Or?
Yeah, keep it in, man. Yeah.
Sweet.
If anything, it'll make other people that stutter kind of feel like a little bit more sweet about themselves. Like, all good, yeah. I don't care about it. It's who I am.
I was wanting to. I was hoping you'd.
Yeah, no, I don't care, man. If anything, like I think later on in life with the whole stutter, when I was young, I used to get picked on heaps all the time. As I got older, girls thought it was cute. They were like, "Oh, you got such a cute stutter." I was like, "Yeah, I'm a roll with this." Yeah, so it has worked a little bit in my favour, but I'm definitely not a fan of talking on the phone. And it was one of those weird things. When I woke up, it was just there.
Yeah.
I don't know where it came from. It was just there, and then I just couldn't shake it, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And then, yeah, probably 2 years worth of like speech therapy. We were sweet. Yeah, much better. I still have it occasionally, but they teach you how to breathe through it, and that's how you talk. You exhale, and then you speak, and you calm down, you relax.
I'm glad we know each other, otherwise.
Yeah, this is all good. Yeah, if you were some random, this would be like straight strange. I'm Bosch, and this is my Harley. Bye.